this video, I will be demonstrating, I'll be walking through with you together on solving another problem on Leetcode. So today's one is going to be slightly different. We're going to look at the arrays rather than the linked lists, unlike the one we looked at in the last videos. So for this one, the problem that we're getting is basically, given we have a string s, find the length of the longest substrings, right, in these characters. So basically, how do we do this? Well, the key here is without repeating the characters. So let's take the first example here, right? So what this is asking us is, like, if we look at from the first character A, B, C, right? So we have A, B, C, which is give us 3 letters. The next letter is A, which is a repeat of the first characters. So in this case, the maximum we should return is 3. Of course, this can start from any point. So we can also start from, let's say, the maybe another point later on as well, right? So and if you look at the second one, BBB, the reason why this is only 1 here is because if you start from the first one, the second character we get is B. So of course this is a repeating of the first one. So, and similar here, the reason why here's 3 is because if we look at this substring here, WKE, this is unique, as in the letters in here does not occur. WK, if we're adding any other characters into here, we would be repeating. So this is the reason why we have the longest substring here is 3, because the next one, W, will be repeating. So so given we have this, we can now try to tackle these problems. So how do we do this? Well, I think the clue in the question is we want to have something without repeating characters. So the key word here is without repeating characters. So to test something if it's repeating, then the best data structure we can use is actually a set. So, and this is the first thing we should do, right? So if we define a set of characters, and let's call it args equals new hash set. The reason why we choose hash set is because hash set usually give us a very good performance. So of course the other alternative we can choose is tree set, but we'll get to that in one of the later videos. So okay, so once we have this hash set, now what do we do? Well, the algorithm we're going to use is basically we start from the first position and we keep adding to it, to the hash set, the letters we're experiencing. So we add A, we add B, add C, then we test, well, if A is in, then when we get to A, we see, well, A is already in the hash set, therefore we're going to return 3, and we keep track of this as we go through along, and in the end we find the maximum we're going to find and we return it. So in this case we need a variable called max, which initializes to 0, and here we can start our first iteration of the for loop. So for I equals that smaller than s dot length, we're going to iterate all of them from beginning to end, and we're going to do a second for loop here, which is from I into j equals to I j smaller than s dot length, and also j plus plus. So yeah, so you can see the reason why we're using this is because good convention. When you work as a self-engineer, you should always try to aim to make the variable names as to make the format as consistent as possible. So notice here I'm leaving a space between each of the semicolons. I'm also trying to name my variables. So I and j are standard indexes, which we use in programming. So okay, so the next point, so now the reason why we need j, which is set to I, is because we need this j is going to be iterating from A, right? So once we set I to A, the j is going to start from A, and it's going to go to B and C and A until it gets this A here. So in this case, what we need to do is to have a counter to, a temporary counter, to count how many of the non-repeating letters we have got so far, right? So here we actually I start off with 1, because as soon as we have a letter here, that counts as 1. So we're going to have 1 in here. In this loop here, we're going to check. Well, first of all, we're going to check if it's already in my hash set, right? So if args still contains, so this is the method to test if it's in the set. Well, if it's in my set, let's actually, before we do that, is also, this is another good practice. If we're going to reuse a variable a lot, right? So in this case, we're going to use the value s.char at j. So we should save into a variable. So in this case, let's call it char, and let's call it temp. Let's call it current, actually, probably a better name. So equals to s.char at j, right? Sorry. So this s.char at j is the current values we're looking at. So in here, if we do if org contains current, right? So what this means is that if the current is already in there, then that means, like in this case here, if I already have 8 in there, then there's simply no point in continuing. So I know we're just going to break out of the loop. But before we break out the loop, actually, let's just break out the loop first, because as soon as we get to something like 8 here, we need to break, right? Otherwise, it's going to be the case that my data structure does not contain current. So in this case, what we want to do is to increment our count, right? So if it does not contain it, that means it is a valid. So in this case, we can add it, and then we can go to the next one, right? So and this is the purpose. But before we do that, we should also see that we need to clear our hash set. We need to add it to our hash set as well. So in this case, we're simply going to do orgs.add c. The reason is because once we see the letter, it needs to be added to the hash set. So we'll make sure that if we see it again, we can then return false. We can break out the loop as we have in here. We're also going to increment the count here. So okay, so this is what we're gonna keep processing things until we go through the whole thing, and at the end of it, the first thing we want to do is to check, well, if our count is actually greater than max, then we can update our max to be equals to count. So in this case, we ensure we always have the maximum value. But another thing, don't forget, is that we are using this data structure, right, orgs to contain all the letter we have seen up to this point. But when we get to here, we should clear everything here, right? When I increment to the next level, ij, we haven't seen anything, so it's a brand new beginning for us, right? So in this case, all the values that's left over in the orgs is going to be invalid, so we don't want that anymore. So in this case, we need to have a line that called. So there's a method that clears our orgs. It's simply just called clear. So this is going to reset to empty set in here. So okay, so now we have that. We want to test. Now we have max. We can just simply return max at the end, and then we can test this. Right. So if this works, okay. So this is good. So compiler is giving us error, and let's see why the error is. Well, so cannot find a symbol orgs.add c, and let's see why we haven't got c. And it's because our variable, I named our variable wrong. So instead of c, it's actually called count. So now if we try to rerun it, so see if we got the answer. Okay, let's see. Now we have output 4 and expecting 3, so we are one more than we should. And let's see the reason why, right? So we have A, B, C, so this gives us 3. When it comes to 4, right? So it's going to see that, well, it already contains 4. So, and every time it's going to increment, right? So when it comes to A here, it's going to increment to 1. When it comes to B here, it's going to increment by another 1. You can see here, it's going to increment by another 1. So the reason is because we actually starting our count from 1, but we can actually start from 0. In this case, this will work because we are going to be, so we're not, because we are starting with 1, then we actually increment by 1 more than we should. So now it's accepted the basic test case, and let's see if this will work. And brilliant, so we got it here. So as you can see, so this is a basic algorithm. There probably is a faster way to do this, but the first thing we should do is in an interview is always give them a correct algorithm that actually works. And then perhaps we can talk about how we can use some of the advanced concepts such as dynamic programming to improve our performance even more. So and that's it for my current videos. Please subscribe to this channel if you'd like to find out more about how to tackle those video interview problems and how to get better at problem solving.